Fill your thirst beside the river. Wash the journey from your hands. Feel the comfort flow inside you. Come this far, you understand.
Hi, welcome to Healing Outside the Box. I'm Rosemary Lachance, an energy healer and a spiritual teacher and therapist. I am your host for this thought-provoking series and am dedicated to providing you with food for thought information and answers to all modalities of alternative healing, spiritual development, animal welfare, environmental concerns, and so much more in the form of guest speakers who are experts in their fields. This series is recorded and will be shown in your area on your local public service cable network. Please contact them for dates and times. If you have a group that you would be interested in, what I have to offer, I'm available to come to your group and teach. I will give you our contact information at the end of the show. Please visit my website and click on My TV Show, where you will find a wealth of information about this show. These shows are now available for you to watch free on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type in Healing Outside the Box to make your choices. We are constantly adding new shows, so keep checking back. We're also on Facebook under Healing Outside the Box. Please like our page for the latest information about the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, tonight is our 204th show. And the title of the show is called Magic in Plain Sight. And my guest is Pat Heavren. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you for having me back.
Oh, I love having you here. Pat's been on our show before, and she always makes the show delightful and sparkle and always has new information for us. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Pat before we begin. Pat Heavren owns and operates Living Wisdom Listening. Living Wisdom Listening?
That's what. Sure, Living Wisdom Listening.
Okay, I thought I had that wrong. All right. Also known as the Wisdom Keeper. She's the Wisdom Keeper.
The Wisdom Keeper connection.
Yeah, but you're the Wisdom Keeper.
Well, that's not exactly how it's supposed to go.
Okay.
I'm supposed to help you recognize, all of us recognize, that the Wisdom Keeper lives within here.
Very good. Yeah. All right.
But I answer to many names.
Okay, so the Wisdom Keeper connection in Woodbridge, Connecticut. She is the author of Magic in Plain Sight. When Acceptance is the Healing. Published in September of 2017 by Aldebaran Press, and available on Amazon.com. Pat is former senior teaching faculty
Yep.
with the Four Winds Society, where she trained in contemporary shamanism and light body healing. She is visiting faculty at the Graduate Institute in Bethany, Connecticut, and has presented programs at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, the Kripalu Center in Lenox, Mass., and other venues across the U.S., Canada, and Latin America. Pat's greatest passion is what she refers to as unteaching. She brings this unique offering to others through a program entitled The Magic of Co-Creation, Experiencing Correctness in a World That Believes
Experiencing connection.
Connectedness.
Yeah.
All right, let me do that again. The Magic of Co-Creation, Experiencing Connectedness in a World That Believes It's Divided. That's good. She sees individuals, couples, and clients in her Woodbridge office and worldwide by phone and Skype.
That's a mouthful, Rosemary.
Yes, it was. Boy, I'll take it all.
For someone that has a hard time explaining to other people what I do sometimes, because it's a little hard to fit into my own box, that's an awful lot to say. That's a couple paragraphs worth.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You're kind. You're kind. All right. The first question I'm going to ask, as I ask all our guests, is what made you become interested in all this? When was the turning point in your life? What happened? And so forth.
When I was, some time ago, and I'm not going to tell you how many years back, some time ago, I left a job that I was in for 18 years. And I didn't have any really good reason to leave it other than I knew I had to go. I knew I was called to do something else. I didn't know what. I was successful. You know, I was a professional. I was an executive director of a medium-sized nonprofit. Loved what I did, was well loved for what I did. But I knew there was something else out there for me. So I took a leap at 40 years old. At a time, a big leap of faith. And really didn't know where I was going to land. And still don't know where I'm going to land. Because I'm continually leaping as I mature in even what I'm doing now. So that's how it all started, was just answering that call and taking that leap of faith. And I knew that I wanted to explore, at that time, my yoga practice, which was the first thing that I did, is I went deeply into my own practice of yoga, trained to teach yoga, started dabbling in a lot of things that had always been important to me since I was as high as I could remember.
Really?
I was young. Yeah, so my call really goes back very, very early in time. And I knew that I wanted to be a presence for change and transformation in the world somehow, but I didn't really know what that meant. And my definition of that has changed a lot in the last so I've been doing what I've been doing now for 15 or 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
We get that calling. You know, and I ask this question because I want the people out there to know that can happen to them. They get that calling, but they're afraid to take that leap of faith. And they should try it. They really should. So that's why I ask. So go ahead.
Yeah, we're not, I think we're not very practiced in the unknown. Or we're not very comfortable in the dark.
Good statement, yeah.
We're not very comfortable in the dark. We like, we chase the light.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the light. The light is talked a lot about in the healing world. I'm a big fan of the dark because it's the place where mystery is. It's the place where, you know, in a way that we look at healing, where healing is more about a returning to our source of origin. It's almost like what happens when the leaf falls and decomposes back into the earth and creates that fertile soil from which new possibilities rise. So a lot of the work that I do and the way that I do the work that I do, which some people call healing, and I think it is, but it isn't about finding a new paradigm, creating something new, getting over the old. It really is about really going back to our origins and a remembrance of our interconnectedness with each other as human beings and with the variety of species that we share the planet with. So it's a very organic approach. So I see healing really more as a restoration of that than anything, you know, kind of quote unquote new. But that didn't come easily to me. I think that deepened that understanding of what healing really is, going back to that point of origin and that sacred place that of oneness and connectedness came to me over time. I think in the early days of healing, I was out to transform and change and, you know, not so much fix what was broken, but to give it a new life. And I think that that's part of it, but it's not the whole story. The whole story is in the mystery.
In the mystery.
In the mystery. And
Okay.
learning how to work with dark and the unknown and those calls that come from undefined places inside of us.
Okay, so when you say dark, you're not talking about dark powers, dark like that kind of darkness, are you?
I'm talking about, well, I mean, that has a reputation, doesn't it? Because
Yes.
when we talk about the dark, it's like, whoo, it's a place where we don't want to go. And I think that that's a kind of a view that is, for whatever reason that it's present, it has to do with the fact that we're not very comfortable with exploring the mystery in us or the mystery around us. And so I think that, you know, for whatever reason, forces that, or people over time that were concerned about control and making sure that good things were happening and steering away from bad things, which is a very righteous approach and has a lot of value in it. I think that we began becoming distant from the understanding that really everything is a part of a holiness and an interconnection in which everything has its place in the world. You know,
It's
from
true.
cockroach to eagle to human being.
You're right. You're right. And it's
So-
all part of God. It's all His creation. So even in the dark, there's light.
Absolutely.
So-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, one of some of the stories that are recounted in the book that was just published this past fall was of a master that I worked with from the Andes, a wisdom keeper. And I have a short account of an interaction with him in which we had this conversation about dark and light. And but they don't see the world. These people that lived up at high elevation, you know, these mountain cultures, which are traditionally wisdom cultures, not unlike those the yogis in the Himalayas, the wisdom cultures in South America. What they consider is that there isn't a light and a dark, that these aren't two separate forces. It's light and less light.
There you go. That's good. I like that.
And it's really consistent with the way that we think about, you know, our own sun, right? So at sunset, we don't, you know, look at the clock, no matter what time it is, summer, spring, fall, winter, and panic that the sun isn't going to rise tomorrow.
Right.
Right? The sun dips down. It appears to disappear. It's dark out. We go into midnight. You know, when there's no moon, it's very dark. But we know that the sun is still there. And I think that our relationship, again, to light has to include the beauty of this dim place as well.
Yeah.
It's the place of hibernation. It's the place of seclusion. It's a wonderful place. It's why we
true.
have fireplaces in our homes.
Yeah,
it's
it's
why,
true.
you know, traditionally in tribal culture, gatherings and communities happen around the fire. That's where stories were told. That's where healing occurred.
You're right.
So-
It makes it kind of cozy, the darkness around you.
Absolutely.
It makes it very cozy.
But it has gotten kind of a bad reputation.
Yeah, you know, you're
and,
right.
In healing circles as well. So
I never talked to anyone about this, but this has brought up a whole new point, and I totally
Absolutely.
agree.
Absolutely.
This is great.
because if we can't find that contact point of connectedness, we've divided our world. And then how do we ever get beyond this us or them, or, you know, that we see pervasive in all of our social and political circles and climate right now? It's
right.
It's very difficult. You can never get beyond that because everyone is always then jockeying for position or attention or power. But a more holistic view, you know, acknowledges that we're here, and in fact, some of the old Judeo-Christian, you know, the biblical stories, and whether you consider them mythology or true or real, but you know, the story of the Garden of Eden, you know, when we, you know, as the story goes, you know, God says, "This is all yours. This is all paradise." Except you might want to avoid eating the fruit from the tree of good and evil, you know, the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
It was just a great suggestion. But in effect, it was actually a very good directive, because as soon as we eat and partake of the division of world as either good or evil, and we take that into our consciousness, if you saw what happens in the myth, you take the bite of the apple, and then all of a sudden, there's vulnerability. There's a sense of, oh my God, I'm naked. Oh my God, if I'm naked and vulnerable, what do I need to do to protect myself? What about the tiger behind the tree? You know, self-consciousness came on, and then there was a sense of the human being separate from the world, the natural world that it was a part of. So it really wasn't such bad advice that God gave. It was like, yeah, the paradise is yours, but if you begin to sort for it as divided, as good and bad, right and wrong, light and dark, then we have what we have had for the last several millennia or more, and this constant battle between the forces of good and evil.
You're right. Every day it goes on. Every day.
And Einstein, by the way, has, you know, a really great take on this, is that you can't ever solve a problem at the level it's created. Is one of his, it's
I like that.
one of his quotes,
Yeah.
not the exact quote, but So we have to look for something else. And part of what I do in the work that I do in my unteaching, which we can talk about in a minute.
I want to talk about that.
But what we really do is and this is what I do with people with their personal stories, whether I'm seeing a couple or an individual. I'm a listener of the natural wisdom and intelligence that is at the root of all of our stories, and that place of paradise, that connectedness that's there. And I'm always constantly listening for that, and listening for the places where other people or ourselves, that our own narratives judge that place as wrong or bad. It goes right into the shadow, and then it pops right out into the world around us, so we can confront it there. So it really is about, all the work that I do now is about thinking of healing as a restoration of the original truth that we're all connected, and that we need everything in its colorful brilliance. Even sometimes the things we judge and don't think are good have at their root some light.
Yeah, true. That's true. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Can I ask,
Please
what
do.
is a wisdom keeper? What does that mean?
Well, that term, and I think about that term a lot. Originally, when I formalized my business as a corporation, as an LLC, wisdom keepers, in that I was trained and shaped in a neo-shamanic tradition that rose from South America. My teacher was instrumental in bringing some of the wisdom teachings and healing practices of that culture back here to North America. And the wisdom keepers were the ones who were said to understand that really this place that I just talked about, that the root of everything is sacred, that the root of everything is holy. And it manifests in many different ways, but it is a culture on which everything depends on everything else, right? Including the predators and the prey, and how that all goes. And so the wisdom keepers were touted as the ones who were able to remember that, and were able to be a presence for other people to remember that in their company. So at the time when I was very steeped in learning from my teacher and learning what he learned from his teachers in the Andes, it was a phrase that was very familiar. I connected with it. And so when I opened my business, that's how I created that LLC, as the Wisdom Keeper Connection. Not because I know anything, but because I am a space for a wisdom and an intelligence that is beneath and around and inside all of us, and that I hope to be a space for other people to discover that for themselves. But it's actually, as time has gone on, it's been some years that I've been doing this work, that has become less the best descriptor for what I do. So I keep it there because it fits. But it really is a living wisdom, this living intelligence that I'm interested in listening for. And it's present in everybody's stories. You can't get away from it. It's here all the time, in every circumstance, in every political issue that comes up, in every challenge that we face internally or in relationship with other people. It's always there. It's this living wisdom, but we have to listen for it, because sometimes it's deeply buried, and that's what I'm really, I'm good at doing. Listening for that living intelligence that comes up and wants to be seen differently, is begging to be seen differently.
All right.
We have a divided world, and we're trying to find ways to find that connectedness, to be able to restore paradise. It's a big, it's a big objective to have.
That's a different way of putting it, but it's absolutely true. It's the same thing. It means the same. We are trying to, and we just seem to be getting farther and farther apart. All right, so you're an un-educator. What is unteaching?
So along the same lines of what we've already been talking about, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek phrase, because I don't like to think about myself as a teacher, as soon as, again, what I hope to be for others is a source through which they can contact the intelligence that is living within them, and that light and that spark of connectedness. So I think as soon as we start to impart something as being a teacher and give instructions, it's a wonderful thing, don't get me wrong, but I prefer to create the space for people to begin to trust their own narratives and to find that source from within them. And that's why unteaching, it's a more self-directed pathway. And because otherwise we have, and we learn by imitations, babies imitate.
Right.
They imitate what they see. And that's a very important part of anything. In fact, I think when I was first on your show, which was a long time ago, I'm going to say it was probably 2004, maybe, or 5.
Yeah, really long time ago.
It was in your first, few episodes. For the audience, we were chatting before we started to tape about Rosemary remembering me coming in with my feathers and my rattle and my spirit water and spritzing the air around and going through all these wonderful rituals. And they are wonderful rituals.
They were. I enjoyed it.
They're beautiful to acknowledge the winds of the cardinal directions around us and how that light variegates from the emergent light of spring into the kind of light in mid-spring that's like a bud, to the blossom that comes in summer, to the first fruit that's harvested, and then the final fruit that drops from the tree, and then that light dips down, and it's that whole circle is a circle of light. So when I was here, whenever it was 2004, 5, 6, whenever that was, I was shaking my rattle and I had my feathers. I was imitating what my teachers did. And it was very valuable. It allowed me to come in contact with something that I hadn't remembered from before, which is I have a relationship to this form of light, these seasons around me, this course of the day. And so I imitated it, and it was wonderful.
It was.
And it allowed me to evoke a connection that had always been there. And then over time, and I guess I'm getting a little older because I'm a lot grayer than I was the last time I was here. But over time I realized that, these seasons, they live right inside here. They live inside me. And so I do a lot less of the dramatic ritual. All those things are lovely and wonderful, but I think in my maturity, it's much more interesting to become the witness and the observer of what is as it is, and to focus more on being as the healing rather than doing. We're a culture that loves doing.
Yes.
We always got to do something. We've got to have a full plate. We've got to achieve certain objectives. That's how we are rewarded in Western culture. And
right.
And so even healing and some really wonderful healing practices are about doing. And so I'm a big fan of undoing. Again, that place of returning back to the origin rather than to do, but to find that original place and space of connectedness. And then it's just a whole heck of a lot easier because you don't have to do so much.
Okay.
The book.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that next.
Can I show
yes,
it
show
to
the
folks
book
here?
Okay.
So the book is called,
Go ahead.
Magic in Plain Sight, When Acceptance is the Healing.
Hold it up. Hold it up once more time. Okay, that looks good. All right.
So that second part, when acceptance is the healing, is that's where the rub is, because we accept the wonderful things, but how can healing be available for us through acceptance when it's the stuff that's hard to swallow? That's the place. It's said from the sages and wisdom keepers that I have had the grace to be able to be in contact in my life with as teachers and unteachers. What I've come to understand is that, that place of of acceptance and surrender. I think we talk a lot about it in healing work as surrender or letting go.
Letting go.
But except that letting go sometimes means let's kick this out because we think it's valueless. Let's get over it. Let's get rid of it. It's an old paradigm. There's a lot of that. Sometimes in healing circles, but also in our everyday language. We don't often think of it as a regenerative process, a recycling process. It's a death process. You can't have the reborn until you can be connected to the death of it. You can't have a spring unless you have a fall and a winter.
Right.
Before it. So this place of working with death is for me, the most direct path of contacting the all, the source, the everything. It's when we return back home to totality, right? And almost every religious stream has those stories in their mythologies.
You say working with death.
Death.
Okay, you want to explain that statement?
Sure. Work with death. Acceptance is the gentlest form of death.
Accept that you're dying?
No, acceptance as a practice.
Oh,
so
acceptance
as a practice
right.
is saying, I'm making room for what you say, and I'm not going to say, well, gee, can I tell you how I feel about that, Rosemary? Would you like to know my opinion?
Yeah. Okay.
And for you out in the audience, social media is a place where we often are fighting for getting our opinions
yeah, you're right.
out into the world. And we have lost contact with, and it's nothing wrong with opinions. There's beauty in strong and powerful positions and opinions, but we've lost our ability to connect with this receptivity that is that comes with listening. To be a space of inclusion for things rather than to fight like heck to assert and advance our opinions.
Yeah, you're right.
So that is, in terms of death, there's lots of ways to talk about death. There's physical death. And then there's the death that occurs in listening when we drop our position, our need to be right, when we broaden our, the opportunity to actually hear and recognize the diversity that exists in inclusion.
You're right, that one statement, need to be right. Mm-hmm. That's what we all do.
Yes.
That's what we all feel. We
Yes.
want to be right.
Right.
We don't want to hear anything. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to know about it. This is it. End of subject, right?
And then we create us and them.
Yeah.
One of the, this is kind of a fun story. It's also another story that's recounted early in the book when you had asked me early on about how did I get into this work, and I jumped ship out of that really great job that I had with no money behind me, no resources in the bank, a husband who had just finished graduate school and hadn't gotten a job yet. So, I really jumped.
You really jumped, yes.
I really jumped out. And one of the first things I did, I was doing my yoga. I was spending a lot of time, I was doing some consulting for colleagues and stuff as well. But I decided to take a mediation training over at our local Quinnipiac University Law School. And the Center for Dispute Resolution, it was one of the very first cohorts that they put out for that particular training. And I thought, well, mediation feels like something that would be a really good thing for me to do, because I always found myself like with one foot in one world, one foot in the other world, and always trying to find that place of how can I bring opposing sides together.
Yeah.
That's what healing was. So I'll tell a funny story about that training that's recounted in the book, and it came in the icebreaker exercise, and the very first thing we did when we walked in the room. And I was the lone soldier in there without a legal affiliation. There were lots of attorneys who were there looking to do collaborative, the collaborative law was just coming on board. This is back in like 2002, was just coming on board as a sort of the newest thing in legal practice. And so it was a lot of few businessmen, but mostly lawyers, and an ombudsman, and there might have been one social worker, and then there was me, who was studying yoga, was a former administrator of a nonprofit, and then this really deep spiritual well, and this creative way of listening to the world that was was always present with me, but I didn't have words for yet. So the facilitator said, okay, we're going to do an icebreaker exercise. Find a partner. I found a partner. We all divvied up into twos. And then he said, okay, this is your thing. You're going to draw you're going to create an invisible line between you. And you're each going to take a turn with trying to get that person over to your side, right? Just see what happens. So the guy that I worked with was a wonderful guy. He had just gotten his JD, wanted to open a family law practice. And he did all the kind of right things. He was saying, oh, it's beautiful over here. Come on over here. Look at this side of the line. He was trying to entice me over. And I was playing my part and digging in my heels. And, it was very playful. Yeah. So we braked after his, and I didn't give in, of course. So we took a little break before it was my turn, and we looked around the room, and everybody was being playful with this. Some guys were taking out their wallets, and they were saying, "Can I bribe? Let me bribe you over to this side of the line." And so when it came my turn, and this happened very naturally, but it's sort of the basis of which I work now. But it was a foreshadowing of it. I didn't even know it. So he looked at me, and I went like this, and there was my invisible line. And so I looked at him, and I reached into my pocket, and I took out an invisible eraser. I didn't tell him that's what it was. And I bent down on my knees, and I went, and I put the eraser back in my pocket, and I said, done. Invisible line, invisible eraser. We don't have to worry about you're not in my space and you need to be over here and I need to be where you are.
That was good.
Right? Yeah. So it was a very intuitive thing for me to do as a creative thinker and a creative listener. And that is actually what I do a lot with people, is I help find that common ground, that true common ground, whether the struggle's an internal one for them or whether I'm sitting with a couple and war is happening in the kitchen.
I'm curious, so what did your teacher and your partner think about that?
That's also recounted in the book. Their jaw dropped. But I was kind of used to that because I always had very marginal ideas of things. And I don't think my partner knew what to do with it. And the facilitator didn't really break out what had happened with people. Oh. So it was more of an icebreaker exercise. But I think that fellow probably hasn't forgotten what happened because he just, gave me what I call the look.
The look, yeah.
And I get the look a lot because I can see very easily how our perspective and our perception, from the shamanic training that I had, my teacher in that realm used to talk about how, shamans, we become masters of our perception, so that when we recognize that how we engage with something, what we see and how we see it drives our experience in the world. So it's both a lens that we are receiving the world through, and it's also a creative lens through which we are co-creating our world. So how we engage what happens inside of us, how things are inside of us, is going to mirror outside in the external world around us. And how we greet and engage our external world is going to determine our tomorrow. So, shamans have always, even though I don't identify that way, because I'm not a shaman.
You're not a shaman?
I am a shaman. We're all shamans, Rosemary.
Yeah.
We're all medicine. We're all healers. We're all medicine men and women. I like to work within this cultural context, and quite frankly, there's something when you say, "Oh, I'm a shaman." What does that really mean? It's a term for me that belongs in its context of origin, which is with the men and women who were living in tribal culture, and that this whole medicine tradition came from that. I can answer to, I'm a modern day shaman. I'm a contemporary shaman or a neo shaman.
I read a definition of that was they are able to travel to the other side of life and get information and bring it back to this life, and they go back and forth. Is that right?
Mediator between the worlds.
Yes, there you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
So I could, right, and to know that your side of the line and my side of the line are connected. So to be able to straddle both of those things. So yes, I'm still all of those things, but I prefer not to use the term because sometimes it's off-putting. And I think over the last 10 years of my practice, I want to be able to morph and connect with whoever walks through my office door. I want to connect with what's important to them spiritually or religiously, whatever their social context is, whatever their world. I want to listen to their world, and I want to shapeshift, which is also something shamans were always credited with doing.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean I become a bird and fly somewhere, although I might. But it's the part of me that can listen in such a way and meet someone exactly where they are. Because healing isn't my job for them. Healing, again, is a place, me being a space for a place for you or someone else to reconnect with themselves in a holy way, the WHOLLY way.
Okay.
Holy and wholeness. In wholeness. Yeah.
All right. You are a life relationship coach and a living wisdom un-educator. So, want to explain that? Life relationship living coach and so forth? So people would, if they want to see you, talk with you, tell them a little bit what you do.
So people come to me for lots of different reasons.
Okay.
So individuals will come to me because they have a medical issue, for example, that they're struggling with. Maybe it's a diagnosis of cancer. I am not a healer in the sense that I am working directly on the symptoms of cancers. There are doctors who do that very, very well. What I do is I'm the person who listens to the story of that unfolding illness. And I help that individual, first of all, recognize the opportunity that it's bringing. Helping them to become aware of all of the different factors in those opportunities that are present. And to restore places of judgment that might be, when I think about, and we know this in the healing world, that there's such a deep connection between the body, the mind, our emotions, the soul, and the spirit, and we can work on any levels of those access points. So we're connected on all of them all of the time. What I helped to do for people who come in with a physical issue, for example, is I look at the map that they're carrying. As each one of us, the stories that we tell and the narratives that we share with each other are a map of exactly where we are. And so I'm listening for those points in the map, and I'm listening for where the judgments lie and where there is a sense of holiness and connectedness. And they give me the information that I need to know, okay, so this cancer's in place, what's happening on the level of the soul, what's happening on the level of the emotions, why is this an opportunity right now, how do we tap it as an opportunity, and to look at it, how do we come into right relationship with it, and all the factors around it. So people come to me with health concerns. They come to me more often with emotional struggles and challenges, traumas that are small and big, all different sizes, things that have chased them in their life story and just costumed themselves differently over time. To be able to listen to those stories in a new way and to be able to retell them in a powerful way. So I help people cultivate that. And I have a big tool bag that I use for that process. It's not just conversation, but it is to find the holiness in what's occurring. whatever that is, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's been something that someone perceives as or has experienced as damaging as a child, how to come in contact with that story and to move forward and operate in the world with it as a resource rather than a problem.
All right, so I'm trying to say, like, what would a person say to themselves if people out there want to come and see you? Why would they come? What would they say, like, from what you say? I may say the wrong thing here, but you correct me. If supposing they had cancer, they come to you to help them to cope with it, or do they come to you with problems that they've had, like a therapist? You're like a therapist, right? Emotional, physical problems. We know all physical illness stems from emotional and spiritual reasons. So is that what you do? So they would say, what would they say to themselves? I want to go to Pat Heavren because I want.
Well, probably the ending of that sentence would be, I'm looking for something I haven't found yet. That would probably get them to me. That's often the people that I've seen lots of people that have wonderful relationships with therapists. And they often will come to me because I'm not working with a problem orientation or in the realm of pathology. I'm working with what is perfect in what's happening right now, which is a very different way. In fact, one of the early titles for my book that I decided I'd probably best toss out rather than, because I thought nobody would ever pick it up, but I thought of Pathology is the Pathway. I thought it would be a little tricky to actually title the book that, but that's what I do, Rosemary. I help people engage the story of whatever's going on in their life as the particular pathway. Because, I'm trying to think of an example, a very simple and benign example of this. I had a couple who came to me, and I work a lot with couples, and they were feeling very disconnected from one another. Okay. They were not spending a whole lot of time together. Their kids were older. If they were still in the house, they were probably one foot out the door. But they had really, she had her own friends. He was somewhat of more of a, preferred a more reclusive, existence. They were really in two different places. And so when they came to me, this was a big problem, and they wanted to solve this big problem. What were they going to do? Were they going to split? Were they going to stay together? Okay. And so this very simple little thing made such a difference for them in the very first time they came to see me, because I flipped around. Like, they were thinking they were going to come to me, and I was going to give them instructions on what they needed to do. You got to do something, right? Got to make it. Got to do something. It can't just be right the way it is, to bring them together. And I looked at them and I said, here's your homework. I want you to let go of being concerned about needing to come together on something. I want you to go a little deeper into your supposed divisions. Go out and enjoy yourself in that shed. Go upstairs to the second floor. This gal she wanted her separate space. I said, go do it and enjoy it. And then maybe just bring each other to the other space. But I want you to just accept your difference and let that be an encouragement to go deeper into it. And they were totally shocked, because they had never had permission, because in their minds, the stories they were saying is, this is not the kind of marriage, this is not a good marriage, because good marriages, this should be happening, and we should be doing that. Right. We shouldn't be doing this. Right. And what I did in that very first meeting was just take all of that off their plate and just say, pretend. It's not going to change. But it's going to be the best thing in the world for both of you to live in the same house in two separate ways. And there was a relief.
Yeah, you're right. It makes so much sense.
It wasn't rocket science. Yeah. It was not rocket science. It's acceptance is the healing, right? You start there. Now, were there other things that needed to happen from that? Absolutely. But the first step was to say, this is happening. Okay, how can this happen? How can this be the pathway? It's much easier. One of my teachers used to say, You want to change the course of the river. You can fall trees, you can build bridges, you can, shove boulders into the river to change the course of the river. Or you can just stick your finger in and move your hand a little this way or a little that way.
I know, we look for these big things to solve, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, gotta need this big thing to happen.
Dramatic things, rattles, feathers, spirit water, right? I've been there, I've done that.
Yeah.
I'm in a place in a phase of life where I understand that it's not like getting out of the way. We're important, but we are the seers of our world, and how we see the world determines our experience of it on a one-for-one basis. So, how relieving it is to be that couple that comes in that they're worried that, oh my God, what does this mean? Our kids are leaving the nest. We don't know who each other is anymore. It's a real problem. Should we be thinking about getting a divorce? We're doing it all wrong. Maybe we never were together in the first place for the right reasons. This is what's going on in their head. And to have just someone sit and listen to their story and say, you're doing great, just as you are. And let's make your homework to do more of that. And then let's see what happens in a week when you come back. And they came back and they were like, it was kind of crazy, but the sense of relaxedness from having those shoulds removed off the plate.
Yes. Very good. That's a great way to look at all this.
Yeah. And that's just the very tip of the iceberg in a very, very simple way. But so much of what we do in our culture is embedded with, we've got to change it. We got to make, so I don't do transformational work. I do the opposite of it. You come see me, I'm not going to tell you to do anything different, but I am going to help you find some contact with a living wisdom and intelligence at the basis of your story that you didn't know was there.
Right, that you didn't know was there, right.
That you did not know was there. And what I can tell you about that is people don't just come for small things. They come from really big traumas. And I've dealt with lots of people whose lives have been hijacked by this problematic thinking of how their life has been completely derailed by some event that happened to them yesterday or many years back. And it can truly change a life when you can encounter that as, I have a really good story for that, as a place of beauty, as opposed to be a place of pain. And then transformation does occur, but it occurs naturally as a result of acceptance. And the acceptance then draws that individual back to a contact with connectedness, with everything. And from there, something gets fertilized and it naturally arises. Then we can put our will behind it. Then we can put our power into it. But we're not trying to get to what is new by kicking out what's old. So it's a very organic way of working. So very much in line with what the masters who really were masters of understanding their relationship to the organic world, and that turning, that rattle thing, that the shamans do, and they rattle with their rattles. What they're doing is they're turning over the world of that person. So I don't need a rattle to do that, and it looks kind of funny to do that in our cultural context. It's really great for your bank account when you first start out, or when you're you put your shaman shingle out. And back when I was doing it, it was new. There weren't too many shamanic practitioners out there. And people think, oh, great, she can help me. This is something that's new and unusual. And it's terrific in the beginning, because people are looking, this goes to the question about the un-teacher, people are looking for you, Rosemary, to solve my problem, right? I'm coming to you.
Right.
We're not used to models where the healer is sitting over here and not the teacher. Right? Not the coach. So when I'm coaching people, I'm not doing it like, yay, rah, rah, go. What I'm doing is I'm coaching people to listen for their own stories and to engage their own daily life as an experience of walking the holy path. And you could use any other word you're comfortable with. Path of
Maybe
wholeness.
I'm wrong, but it seems like it's already there, and
Yes.
they don't see it, and
Yes.
you're helping them to see what's already there.
Yes.
Is that right?
It's a more direct path than trying to, you change the course of the river.
The river,
because
yeah.
you don't have to do anything to the river's fine, just the
Right.
way it is.
Right.
Right?
That's
It's
good.
our need to try to make it different that is the root of our suffering. You know, this is, a lot of wisdom traditions have this embedded in their teachings, whether it's Buddhism or Hinduism or Judeo-Christian or Islam. They all have ways at this. But this is a practical mystical path. And it's mystic in its sense of its connection to unity. So I'm really at this point in time, and I have a whole program that I do here locally, which is very, very powerful. It's a 2-weekend program, and I also take that out regionally as well. But my current joy and drive is to be able to work with people who are movers and shakers in their own realm, be it professionally or personally in their own communities, to be able to become people who truly understand how it is that we contact this place of oneness within this experience of difference that is our diverse world. Because what we need to do is to remember that. If we can't remember that, then we're only going to be fighting against each other forever. My position and your position,
Right.
Red and blue, right and wrong, and there's no mediation with that. You know, we have to take the eraser out and go like, if it's an imaginary line, many spiritual traditions say this world is not the real world. You know,
Right.
it's an
yeah.
illusory world.
Yeah.
Well, let's go with that. If it's an illusory world, then your imaginary dividing line in the sand, you can take out that eraser and erase it. And remember that we are connected. And then how do we live into that in a world out there that is certain that it's divided? So my current passion is really, you know, I love the work I do individually with people and in the relationship work, but I'm really super interested in working with groups of people who want to take their leadership in their communities into this larger way of thinking, this more organic connection. It's just a more direct path.
And this came to you, this way of doing things, just you went inside and you...
You know who my teachers really were?
No.
My clients.
Okay.
Right. So I learned from my clients and continue to learn from my clients about myself and about them. And I began to understand that the world around me, magic in plain sight, again, the book, right?
Yeah.
It's everywhere. We don't have to, you know, heaven isn't where you go after this life. Eden is here. It's the magic, and that word was a tricky word to even think about using. Magic for me is the point where that unity consciousness connects to this divided world, where we can remember the one in the many. That to me is magic, and that's where synchronicity is.
Right.
So when I'm working with a group in a program in a very powerful way, the level of synchronicity that's present in the room is palpable, it's powerful, it's very, very strong, and it always shows up without fail. And it's not because of me. It's because of what happens between you and I. Where two or more are gathered, there I am. And it is that connection in that space that is diverse, and it's returning to that. So now, you know, all the work, and this isn't a how-to book. This book is a compilation of 25 stories, and embedded within those 25 stories are deep esoteric teachings, wisdom teachings, in totally accessible ways. And I encourage people to read it with that idea that it's like a piece of, each story is like a piece of 80% cacao dark chocolate. You can't read that whole book all at once because it'll make you sick, because there's so much, but it's also so subtle, and it's in the most practical day-to-day stories you can imagine. So they're like parables. And I didn't want to write a book to tell people what to do. I didn't want to write another how-to guide to healing, how to guide spiritual transformation. I didn't want to do any of that. To me, that is just, it's a fine path, but it is not the most direct path.
Yeah, right. There's so many of them out there like that too. So
yes, the most direct path is the acceptance of everything that we have right here, right now, already as having been given to us, wherever you think the source of that given came from. Mm-hmm. Call it God, call it Goddess, call it higher intelligence, call it your higher self. I don't care what you call it.
Right.
It doesn't
That's not
matter.
the point, right?
It does not matter what you call it, but the contact with it as and it is a living body of intelligence. And it is once we contact it, we tap into that, and we can't help but recognize our connectedness. So I could go on forever, because it is truly the work that I've been put here to do, and it's maturing now as I'm also maturing.
Yes, we're all learning and growing, no matter right till the day we die.
Absolutely.
No matter what age we are or anything, we're always doing that. Always. We've only got about a couple more minutes left. I'm trying to think, what shall I ask you before you go? What is the magic of co-creation? Or tell us a little bit about shamanism and light body healing. What would you like to say? The magic of co-creation, I think, maybe?
Well, I guess what I'd like to do a couple things.
Oh,
I'd like
a minute.
to
Go ahead. Give
a little summary. If you have an opportunity to go on to Amazon.com and type in Magic in Plain Sight and get a copy of that book, I think you'll like it. I think it will allow you to, it'll be stories that audience members can resonate with, and to be able to find that contact and see where it's embedded. I certainly love to always see new clients at my door. But, that's all a pitch, and it's a pitch for you. That's a professional service that's available for you out there. But for the most of the people who are watching this show that I'm not going to hear from, what I would like for them to have as a takeaway is the importance and the vital importance of you beginning to look around the world around you just as it is, and find any one point of beauty in it and place your focus there.
That's great.
And you don't ever have to come and see me. And I can go scoop ice cream if I want to for a living, because it doesn't matter. What matters is that you have an opportunity to engage your world as it is in a new way. And you can do that by, we all go to the ophthalmologist and they wheel over that thing and they say, better one, better two.
Yeah, right.
Better one. Go back to one. Go find that place where you can connect in, where that line disappears, and then bring it back to the better two world.
That's great.
Unity and duality.
Great analogy.
Yeah.
And great statement.
And so it doesn't matter if I never see you as a client, or you never are a student in my program and you never read my book. Take that away today and it will change your life.
Wonderful. Fantastic information. I love it. I love it, love it. We have to give the contact information now. It flew by. For me, Healing Outside the Box, Rosemary Lachance, phone 203-627-7966, emails whitebuffalo8@comcast.net, and my website, www.rosemarylachance.com. And for Pat Heavren, 203-444-4424. Email info@livingwisdom.guru. Website, www.livingwisdom.guru. All right, Pat, thank you so much.
Oh,
it was so wonderful.
It was
to have
really,
you here.
really great to be back.
I love it. Wonderful things
Thank
you said.
you so much.
Love you, Pat.
And thank you, audience, for being here.
Good night.
Good night.
Mwah.
To the world you have made. Always know you are the vision. See the truth, darkness fade.